So without being in any particular order, the first thing I'm going to cover is bad or inactive mods. Now, nothing destroys a community faster than a bad or inactive mod when it comes to a game's community. And this tends to happen more often than you would think, depending on the game. Players will jump into the community, especially on a game's release, route the game, do a run, and then leave without a trace, which means if the mods of the game do this too, then any new runners who have questions or notice that the game can be improved will be left confused and alone. And even worse, when the mods of a game all have inactive social media links, so no runs are getting verified. And on top of that, no questions in the forums are being answered for people who have new interest in the game, which leaves these runners with no other option than contacting these speedrun forums to request supermod of the game. And this can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks, and then even more so, then they have to figure out the game completely by themselves. So in that process, they may end up just adding to the cycle of inactive mods. When it comes to being a bad moderator of the game, this usually tends to be people who only request moderator to verify runs and edit the page layout to their liking without actually submitting a run for the game or fully understanding how everything works. Meaning that many runs will actually run the risk of being wrongfully verified or even having incomplete runs being verified without a second glance at the run's dramatic time difference. Sometimes the moderators can be active, but are very strict in how they want the game to be played, and it's generally something that's not very reasonable or doesn't have a very logical reason behind it. So, for example, they might say this game needs to be run on normal difficulty, but playing through the game yourself, you find that it's much faster and much better quality of life to run the game on an easy difficulty. And you try to consult the moderator about this, but he refuses to change it. This example tends to run off a lot of people because depending on what game it is, you could die repetitively on a certain boss trying to do an any percent version run of the game because you're not as equipped. Whereas on easy mode, you can just slide by and be able to pull everything off depending on different strats and what you have available. But it's those subtle things, such as a game's difficulty, that can really make a difference between whether somebody will drop out from the game or not, or if there will be a 10 plus minute time save from easy to normal difficulty. Another sign that you're in a bad speedrunning community is that you catch any hint of cheating or something that looks suspicious and you have no explanation for, and when you contact someone, they provide no explanation to you. Now, generally, cheating is a zero tolerance across the board, like the entire speedrunning community, but it still tends to happen behind the scenes, as some games or communities don't always have a way of verifying it if the individual is cheating or injecting codes, using a modded controller, using cheats, or just methods that would otherwise be disallowed from the run and cause a rejection. So you solely have to rely on each runner having 100% integrity for the run, which at times can be questionable based on the community and individuals submitting a run, especially if they're newer to the community, like the speedrunning community, at large. They really want a world record, but they don't want to grind for it, which would tempt them to use, different methods to give themselves an advantage. But these runners are to be warned because there's a lot of people who have gotten permanently banned from the community for cheating and then following up are banned from attending any speedrunning events for, the lack of integrity. Now, another sign that you're in a bad speedrunning community, because nothing gets my panties more in a bunch, nothing grinds my gears more than, nothing rustles my jimmies as much as a structured pay-to-win speedrunning community, to include DLC. Now, this one I absolutely cannot stand, and it's that some communities focus the game on pay-to-win mechanics. such as running the game on different consoles, versions, languages, needing extra DLC, extra equipment, physical equipment that influences how the game is ran, all the way until a person realizes that they just have to drop too much cash that they ever felt comfortable with just to speedrun the game, rather than just requiring everyone to run on either the same consoles and settings or creating separate categories to accommodate different groups of runners, seeing how a separate hardware means different loading time speeds, which, creates an unfair advantage among runners. Unless there's a loadless timer, which tends to strictly be for PC games. I'm not sure if there is loadless timers for console games, but creating a structure and rule set that is accommodating for everyone should be the goal, not just individuals who can and will spend extra money just to have an advantage in the run that everyone else might not have access to, because this would just generally ostracize new runners and create a bit too much of an elitist feel to the community, when in actuality you kind of want fair playing field across the board. You just turn the game on and you run it, without too much of a hassle. Now, it's understandable if there are certain elements of the game that, make it faster, but all in all, speedrunning itself is arbitrary to begin with. So you might as well create a community where everyone has an easily accessible, fair chance to competing for the record. Now, this sign of being in a bad speedrunning community, it's a bit funny, and it really makes me laugh when I see people do it. I'll call this one hiding strats. This is a definite sign that you're in a not so great speedrunning community, especially if there's more than one person doing it. And this one is interesting because in some communities I've noticed that certain individuals will not share strats in the Discord, the Google Doc forums, or any other place, even if it's like a giant skip that saves 5 to 10 minutes, a small glitch here and there, or maybe just, some routing optimizations that ends up being a faster method of completing something, a level or an aspect of the game. Instead, what some of these players will do is they'll hide these things, these strats, up until the last moment when they submit their run. And only through people watching their run will any of these things be noticed, which is generally pretty frowned upon, because many of the people in the community want to help with routing the game and finding faster methods of completing each section, and withholding strats kind of slows down the process considerably, especially if there's a game-breaking skip found that just dramatically alters the entire route of the game, which delays the optimized any % run or any other category run from being put out until the new route is completed. Now, last sign of being in a bad speedrunning community, I'm going to coin as a lack of resources. And, this is always sad to see in some communities when there's a lot of player interest, whether it's, old, new, people coming back to look at new strats. But there's just no one or no resources that are really around to help these players. So they'll often watch the top runs and just kind of be left in utter confusion because they have no idea how, the hows and whys behind how to, follow an optimal route or pull off tricks, glitches, and skips, or understand why, such and such a route is faster, or what to do as backup strategies. Because if something goes wrong, then they'll run into these issues, and this will deter a lot of runners that are trying to get into the game, because they would rather have something to look off of to understand the route and get straight into it, rather than to pretty much essentially route the game entirely by themselves, because they have no one to help them. So they have to go through the process of trying different things or following a route and figuring out how not to die repetitively on it, so on and so forth. And while not every community has like Discord or Google Docs, it's not always needed. In fact, as long as the game's simple enough or fairly straightforward, then all people would need is just some listing of routes, tricks, and just make a short video, like a tutorial. You could have one run where you just turn your mic on and just kind of explain, the hows and whys behind what you're doing, and then just posting that run somewhere, or just making a quick video, just explaining different, glitches and skips and, important pieces of the run that they would otherwise not be able to figure out on their own from watching a run.
Bye.